think.
Yep.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar. We're going to be talking today about jumpstarting your nursing career. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sara Fung. I am a registered nurse. I am the CEO and founder of the RN Resume, where I help nurses land their dream jobs. I'm also a healthcare advocate and a podcaster. And today I have a very special guest, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Sarah. Always great to be with you. My name is James Smith, and I am one of the partners and director of sales at Caring Support.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking about things today that I think will really help anyone who's feeling stuck in their career, feeling burnt out, feeling frustrated, or maybe you are a newer nurse and you're looking to start your first job. So we want to give you some tips and things that I wish I had known when I started my career out. And as we go through the webinar, we really want this to be interactive. So feel free to ask questions, pop them into the chat. I see that there are a couple people who have put in some comments already. Someone is looking for a job. Okay, great place to be if you're looking for a job. So I think we can just share some, personal stories or things that we've learned about what nurses are really struggling with. And the biggest career struggles I find are nurses are not sure how to network. So they need to work on networking skills, interview. So especially, if you haven't interviewed for a long time or you haven't interviewed really at all, this is another area. And confidence. So really just working on your mindset and knowing that you need to walk into a job search confident and project that confidence to everyone around you. James, I'm going to just pause here for a minute and let you interject. Like, what are your thoughts on networking and interview skills and confidence?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Well, we are located in London, Ontario, a Canadian company, and in our community at London, there's a couple of us on the team, and one of them is me, who absolutely loves to network. And you, to be honest with you, it's one of the greatest things you could ever do. And the reason when I say this is from personal experience. About 8 years ago, I started, and I was terrified in the beginning, even though I'm fairly outgoing, and some people would tell you I'm really outgoing, which is probably more true now. But I think it's really important is when people first start, they put so much pressure on themselves because they lead with things like, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to talk about myself. I don't feel confident talking about myself. So, there's so many things you can do to totally not even worry about half of that. I said, so, if you like, Sarah, I can sort of elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. So, for us, we do presentations regularly to schools. And one of the things we talk about is networking skills. And we give the top 5 networking skills. So I'm going to tell you what they are right now. It's number 1 when you go to a networking event. And it doesn't hurt to research ahead of time to see, okay, what kind of people are going? Do I have any idea? What's the point of this event? Because one of the things everybody always does is they walk up, they see your name tag. So I use me as an illustration. Hi, James, what do you do? And I always tell people, please stop doing that because it actually doesn't really matter. And I said, the reason was until you have a relationship, it won't matter. And the thing is what's really important is that when you do come to these events, is be present with people, meaning that be with them, listen to them. Don't be busy staring all around or whatever, because what you get to do in these events is build memorable moments with people. And this is critical because a lot of people don't do this. And then when you do that and you show genuine interest in them, lead with how can I help you rather than I'm looking for a job. It's all about me. It's all about me. Don't be like that. That's how a lot of people network. And what you want to be doing instead is being able to say, hey, I'm interested in you. Tell me about you. And you start to learn really fast. Oh, okay. Here's how I'm going to reply to that. Because now it's very similar to what they're saying. The other thing is, number 2, I tell communication skills. So it's related to that. And that is, do you whether they're nonverbal cues or not. Do you look open to that? Do you look like, your communication? Are you maybe sharing a joke with them that's not offensive, obviously? You putting the person at ease. You making them think like, I'm only interested in you right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then, so another one is interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence. And this is critical. I'm a big fan of emotional intelligence. And I tell people these are the things that when you start showing empathy, compassion, you're genuinely interested in the person. And understand, as a nurse, you're providing care, right? So one of the best ways to provide care for someone is to really show genuine interest in them, right? And then you start to relate to them. And people think, wow, this person's different. And then they feel compelled to want to help you, right? So if you do all these things, it can help you become more confident. One of the things I always tell people is when you come to an event, look around the room and look for the people that know a lot of people who are clearly confident what they do. And this might be a moment of vulnerability, but you come up and say, hey, my name is James. I'm new to this. I was wondering if you could help me.
Mm-hmm.
Then, chances are that person's going to say yes most of the times, if not all the time. So this is critical. This is what I love to do in the community because they'll say, yeah, let's walk the room together. I'll introduce you. And it's a totally different thing. It just makes it easier. I hope that
Mm-hmm.
helps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what you're saying is these skills we need to develop them again because with the pandemic everything went virtual, right? And I think a lot of times we have forgotten how to interact with people and make really strong connections. And what you just said is so true. Like I have been to events where I see people looking down at their phones and I'm like, you're here at an in-person event. This is really valuable. You're wasting time on your phone. You could be doing that any other time. And similarly, sometimes I'll be talking to someone and I can see them looking beyond me because they already think, "Oh, I want to talk to that next person." And you're really not giving that person the attention that they deserve.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's important. And also what you just said about, I get this all the time, and maybe you do too. I get cold messages from people asking me to help them find a job. And, there's no context. I don't know this person. I really don't know how I can help. I think it's more about building relationships and even finding something you have in common, right? Like, I think that's important to establish some commonalities and some bond before you start to take, and maybe you offer something before you even ask for anything in return, just to have, it's like a two-way street. It's not a one-way street, any relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an old quote. I actually don't know how old it is, but I always tell people that for those of us who love to give, you must learn your limits because the takers don't have any.
Right.
And you have to know at what point to say, hey, I'm sorry, can't, like, saying no is okay. But when you do lead with helping people, which is the greatest thing ever, because people start to see you as valuable. And that is wonderful, no question. And I love to help, especially immigrants in our community. And I think it's important for Caring Support, for instance, as a company, we're all about connecting people and bringing them together. And we're about saying, oh, you're finding a job, whatever, but there's so much more to it. And this is critical because at the end of the day, if you can build those relationships properly and make people feel, like, yeah, I want to help you, sure, it won't be so exhausting for the people that are giving, right? Because they're
Right.
just constantly handing out. They never feel any kind of energy, fulfillment, or anything coming back, right?
Yeah, and I think also networking online requires a different skill set because you don't have that verbal and nonverbal cues to go from necessarily. So sometimes when you type out a message, it can come off as a certain way, like maybe that person interprets it as rude, but you didn't mean it that way at all, and you don't have the cues really to give you more context. So I think when you're trying to network online, it's more about getting to know the person. Maybe making some observations like, hey James, I see that you're really involved in helping nurses and healthcare workers, like how can I get involved? Or maybe finding something that that person needs help with and offering that help. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to have 10 or 20 years experience in order to offer your help to someone.
Hmm.
So I think that's important too. And just participate in conversations, right? So when someone posts something that you find interesting, you might want to put an insightful comment, or maybe you want to share it to your network, or even put out some thoughts of your own so people view you as a thought leader. And no, there is no special training required. You just need to get started. And what I call find your voice and find, the topics that you feel passionate about, that you want to talk about, and people will they'll feel your energy and they'll start to join in. So I think that's another good way to network is, getting people to come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about virtual networking, that's what LinkedIn is, right?
Hmm.
And I love it. I absolutely love it. But it's interesting is many times I've been at different events in the past and speaking about LinkedIn, and we might have a screen there, and people would say something like, "Hey, do you mind bringing up my profile? Look at it." And usually, the two kind of things you see on LinkedIn is a profile that looks like the resume, and that's it, right? So the first
Hmm.
question I ask is, "Are you looking for a job?" And they're like, "No." Okay. And I'm like, okay, well then why is it written like this way? Well, they don't know any different, right?
Hmm.
Then you get the other side. You get the person that goes, well, I'm an MBA. I'm awesome. I'm this, I'm that. And I said, listen, I'm sorry to say this to you. Please don't take this the wrong way, but outside your mother, no one really cares. And the reason for that is because, well, how does it relate to them? Right. And so I always say to people, listen, what you want to write a profile that's customer centric. And people would say, well, I'm not in sales. No, we're all in sales. And you better believe that if you're a nurse and you're looking for a career opportunity, whether it's moving on to a new place, whether it's brand new out of school, you need to sell yourself.
Hmm.
You need to and what does that look like? Right.
Hmm.
So a lot of times, like, I always tell people that the greatest asset that we've had as human beings on this planet is our ability to share a story. What's your story? And then people are like, I don't know. But when you think about the proverbial, sitting around the campfire with someone sharing that story of intrigue, and you looked around and everybody is sitting there and they're doing this, right? And I'm going, imagine if you could do that with your life in a snippet, share that. I don't care if they interview 50 people that week, they'll remember you, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, a lot of times, whether it's a profile on LinkedIn, whether it's in person talking with people, are you letting these people know who you really are? And in such a way that says, wow, I really want this person working with us. Like they're going to be whatever it takes. They have such an amazing attitude. They really know who they are and what they want. Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a good segue into talking about confidence and having that mentality because as a nurse, we're not taught any of these things. So we don't view ourselves as needing to market ourselves. We think, at least I was taught that you work hard, you keep your head down, you get X number of years experience, you'll just move up the ladder naturally. That does not happen anymore. And especially if you want to move to a new job or a new organization, nobody knows you. You're going to have to sell yourself and be comfortable with talking about your accomplishments. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to brag or exaggerate or lie about what you did, but how is anyone going to know what you do if you can't articulate it? And I also talk to my coaching clients about developing an elevator pitch. So just think about literally, you get into an elevator and maybe there is a manager or a doctor there that you've been trying to find for so long. You only have 30 seconds to talk to them before that door opens and they're gone. So what are you going to say in that short amount of time? You don't want to spend 10 minutes getting to what it is you want to tell them. So I think that's part of it too, is like practicing how to deliver your story. And maybe you need to think about a memorable challenge that you had and how you overcame it. And that's the kind of stuff that we want to hear. That's what's going to make you memorable and stand out about like above everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that there's, in a candidate led market today, people are saying, well, there's a lot less nurses, a lot less, whatever role that you're looking for. That's true. But the question is, how do you rise above the white noise? How do you become the person that they look to and say, wow, that's a superstar? Because everything that you learn in school, and no disrespect to this, obviously, is great, obviously, and it's a lot of work, but that's taught to all nurses, right? So
Hmm.
one of the biggest difference, and this is true of any industry, is who you are as a person. What do you bring to the table? Your attitude, your, all those things. And if you're not ready to really show that and showcase that, who's going to do it for you, right? You
Hmm.
have to be your own advocate. And
Absolutely.
yeah, you have to be willing to champion that. Not, because I tell people, listen, you don't want to come across as cocky and conceited, but you definitely want to come across as confident because you don't want companies thinking, well, who is this person really? And are they really wanting to, step forward? And we want someone to be a leader. We want someone to have a great attitude. There's very often everybody gets caught up in the operational aspects of stuff sometimes. So they don't realize that they have to stand back and look at it as saying, where's the opportunities for me to instill air of confidence and feeling of we got this. When if someone's feeling a little bit, unsure and uneasy, and there's some apprehension, that you have this tremendous opportunity to step forward and help them and be seen in that, because then you're seen as really valuable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really important, everything that you just said. And I also think that we are taught that if we toot our accomplishments too much, then we're going to annoy people. But that's actually the opposite, because like if you and I talk to nurses about this all the time. Sometimes it's like pulling it out of them what they've actually done, or they'll say to me, "Oh, but I work in ICU and all ICU nurses do that." And I said, "No, they don't. You think that's the case, but it's not." And I think you really just have to spell it out, because the first person to look at your resume may not even have a background in healthcare, so they're not going to know. They're looking to check boxes off of a list. And when I think of looking for a job, it's almost like you're standing in line for a restaurant, right? You're waiting for a table. Are you going to get in line with everyone else, or are you going to find a back door? And the back door is networking. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
certainly do still have to apply online in most cases, but maybe you want to reach out to the hiring manager or someone at that company and say, "Hey, just wanted to let you know I've applied. I'm really interested in working here." And then reiterate your accomplishments, because out of 100 resumes, maybe they haven't gotten to yours yet. But the fact that you took that time to send them a personal message means something. And I don't want people to think it's a waste of time, because networking is never a waste of time. It's only going to get you ahead. Even if you don't have um, a particular job in mind, just networking in general is always something you should be doing for your career.
Yeah. Because it's going to help you really learn who you are, because you're going to have to get that elevator pitch down pat. You're going to have to do this stuff. But understand, when I go to a lot of these events, I see so many of the wallflowers, I'll call them, like, no disrespect, but people that are terrified. And they might say a little bit, but they don't come across as someone who's making a difference, who's creating memorable moments, who you leave that event, guess what? You probably don't remember them. You probably
Mhm.
don't, right? They didn't have any impact on you. So I say to people, why is it that we love certain actors, celebrities, comedians? Because it's the way we feel. Like
Mhm.
the great Maya Angelou quote, it's not what you said or what you did, it's the way you made people feel.
Mhm.
So, I love to do this so much. I keep telling people, if you really want to be awesome at it, learn to inspire people. Because the minute you do that, they'll never forget you, ever, right? And you
Mhm.
think about it I'll say on a physical level, that's what nurses are doing all day long. They're helping heal people. They're doing all these great things to help them. So you often think that you've got to also do the same thing emotionally, make a difference in people's lives where they're like, wow, that person is truly incredible, right? We're having some really great comments over here, by the way, from
Yep,
Claudia.
yep. So we've got one from Claudia. Very true,
Yeah,
about the fear of tooting your own horn. If you don't share what you know and your skills, how will anyone know? Physicians are much better at doing this. 100%. I totally agree. They learn it from med school. It's not about being full of yourself. It's about recognizing your own worth and value to employees. And I think this is where we need to take a look around us, because I love working with all different disciplines, right? And doctors are really great at this. And, we may have our own opinions on physicians in general, but I do think that one thing they do really well is talk about their accomplishments and being confident. And maybe you've worked in an organization where that was kind of stomped out of you, but it's not too late to rebuild these skills. It's not too late to learn how to show your accomplishments.
yeah,
Um, Especially if you're going to a new organization where no one knows you, you're really going to have to highlight what you've done. And sometimes this is a tricky part, because as nurses, we are very task oriented. So if you're a bedside nurse, you might think about, like, what was a really challenging situation I was in? How did I overcome it? Or maybe you were part of a committee of some kind where you improved something like fall rate, or maybe you even were working on the unit when you moved from one unit to another.
right.
These are all skills that you can actually transfer to a new job. And even I think nurses always discount leadership roles. So if you've been a charge nurse, if you've been a preceptor to new students and staff, those are positions of leadership that you should be highlighting, because again, not everybody has that. Anything that you can mention to set yourself apart is going to make a difference. And I think one thing I also wanted to touch upon is you don't need to ask permission to go out and develop new skills. So if you wanted to go online today and take a course on, let's say, Microsoft Office, a lot of nurses these days are looking to work from home. There's nothing to stop you. You don't have to wait for your organization to give you that opportunity. You can take it on your own. So that's one thing I just wanted to mention, just thinking outside the box about what you can bring to the table. Not everything has to be from where you currently work. Although, of course, I always encourage you to take any opportunity you can through your workplace to either get extra training or education.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
absolutely true, Sarah. I couldn't agree more, and I hope a lot of people will take that to heart. If I can add anything to that, I'm going to say a couple things. Number one, um, don't be afraid to take interpersonal courses. Don't be like, that teach you some of the things about how to really show empathy, how to do all these things. Because I could tell you right now, once you do it, you'll say, oh, yeah, I think a lot of this is already in me. Now I just needed to understand how I apply them and what really matters. And then it's going to make such a massive impact on the people that you are connecting with, whether it's in a networking event, whether it's in your job, it does not matter. It will, and the staff that you work with, and people are going to say, wow, that's a rock star. Okay. But the other thing too is don't be afraid to get a mentor. And that might be looking up to people like you who are willing to mentor people, if they are, whoever that would be willing to do so in whatever shape or form. Like, for instance, you help people with their resumes and their career advice, and
Mhm.
that's a form of mentoring, and it's fantastic because you're amazing at what you do. Huge respect for what you do, Sarah. So, really, I tell people, it's really important to learn who you are, to fall in love with that, and then go out and rock star and let people know that this is what you're doing to make an impact on other people's lives. Nurses are to be valued and treasured in this country, period. And even if they've been badly mistreated in a toxic environment, I think a lot of nurses times have to stand up and say, wait a minute, I'm better than this. I'm awesome. I'm doing great things. I'm a nurse that's trying to make a difference. It's very easy to get impacted, influenced by that environment. But today's world, it's so easy for a person to go, you know what? It's not just about money. I need to be happy. I need to be in environments that see this thing as important. So one of the things that we've been talking about, for instance, Caring Sport, when I talk to companies about their marketing, is saying, what is that message that you're sending out to healthcare workers? Why would they come back? You know,
Mhm.
like you really need to address that because we all been talking about burnout forever. When are we going to move beyond that and say that here's what we're doing to mitigate these problems? So it can't be something they keep hidden or tell people later. They need to tell them straight up right away, right?
Mhm.
After all, this is your greatest resource right here. It's not the executive management. It's not whatever. It's the person that's serving the people on the floor, right?
Yeah, I have another comment from Claudia. She says, "Yes, James, I deserve better and to love my work."
That Claudia is awesome, isn't she?
Yeah, amazing. I
Yeah,
totally agree. Um, I think another thing is that we need to think about not putting all the onus on nurses, right? So there's only so much self-care you can do to get yourself out of burnout or exhaustion. There needs to be some onus on healthcare organizations themselves and what they can do to attract nurses. And
yeah.
like you said, convince some of them to come back. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when we've been working with many healthcare organizations, which long-term care, retirement hospitals, hospices, you name it, hospitals as well, of course. Sometimes when they get in and if they have marketing, and many companies don't, there's unfortunately, and I don't say this with any disrespect, but many of these organizations they have been used to a procurement model for, we'll say, a recruitment model for getting people where it was a guaranteed influx of candidates coming in, and they were dictating how it was going to happen, how it was going to flow. People were supposed to feel like, oh yeah, I want to work there. Well, the model's flipped now, and so I say to people, what's messaging like now? Oh, like, well, and they're still talking to them. And I said, let me ask you a question. If you were in their shoes, would that matter to you? Would that attract you? Would that make an impact on you?
Mhm.
Well, maybe not. Right. What do you think would? And they're like, I don't know. Have you thought of asking? It's the same with retention and turnover problems. Very often when you ask the questions of why are they leaving, oh, they're leaving because of money. And I hear this all the time. And I say, well, how do you know that? Well, it's not what it is all the time. Did you ask? No. And I'm like, huh? You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I think a lot of times we have come to this point now in healthcare where we have to really realize that for us to really do this right, we need to absolutely start changing the model where we really take in the emotional side of things too. And we look at what do nurses want? Because during the pandemic, when everybody was so overworked and everything, a lot of that trust was broken. So how you earn people's trust and bring them back is you need to own it. And you need to, and I know this sounds tough for some people, but there's not a single person in this country that thinks this healthcare system's perfect. So why don't we just say, look, we realize these things are a problem. Here's what we're doing to address it. And so, and for things that nurses are going, oh my God, this organization gets it. They heard us, they respect us, they're making changes. And that's the thing that's going to make a difference, I think, really at the end of the day. This is the number one industry for the health and well-being of people. And sometimes it's the worst at looking after its own. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's such a shame and it should not be happening at all.
I totally agree. And I think that things are changing, but
Yeah.
slowly but surely they are changing. Nurses are realizing that they have the upper hand now and they have a lot of choice as to where they can work. I mean, we always hear that, oh, you're a nurse, you can work anywhere. There are jobs that everyone wants and there are jobs that very few people want. So people are starting to realize that they can use their leverage and, they can go where they want to go. And I actually saw this post recently. There's no nursing shortage. There are enough nurses, just not enough nurses that want to work in environments that devalue them, that make them feel like garbage, that are toxic for their physical and mental health. So
Yeah.
nurses are showing with their feet where they want to go. And unfortunately, a lot of places are losing really great nurses.
Yeah. I agree with that, Sarah. I think it's hard to believe in 2023 we're still talking about this because, especially in lieu of the fact that it's hard to find sometimes nurses and hard to retain them. So you would think, wow, maybe my leadership standards or ways of doing things should be different, right? Um, it is the old adage. We talked about this the other day in another conversation. The old adage that people don't leave a bad company and leave a bad boss. And that is true in healthcare as well. People are like, look, I feel devalued and beat up and they feel like a pinata. And the question is you want to go to a place where you feel that here's an environment where they really listen to us, they respect us. And that's not done by giving pizza parties and all this kind of stuff. This is about just the time spent listening and then changing because you listened. There's an old adage that says that we have a tendency to listen to reply rather than to listen to understand.
Oh, all the time.
Oh,
Sometimes I'm guilty of it too. Like
yeah,
as someone's
we all
talking, I'm already thinking about my response and I'm waiting for that opportunity to interject to put my thoughts in. And sometimes I don't hear the last part of what you said. So we're all guilty of it and we all
yeah,
need to work on active listening.
absolutely.
We do it so well for our patients. We need to use those same skills for each other. I have a couple comments here in the
Yep.
chat. So another one here from Marie. This is exactly what I do as a health designer nurse. Design service and systematic solutions to improve nursing well-being. Well-being is affected by recognition, identity, control over one's life. Vertical opportunities mostly. Although money is important, well-being is multifaceted and complex. And when I work with clients as well, especially with career coaching, I say let's look at what your priorities are. There's no right or wrong answer. So is it money? Is it flexibility? Is it opportunity for advancement? You need to decide and be really clear on what your objective is and then go out and find it. Find a place that you think can meet most or even all of these objectives.
Hmm.
Um, Another comment here from Sophia. What an interesting atmosphere for new grad nurses to enter. As a career changer, I am hopeful. Yeah, I think things have changed a lot. So when I graduated, when I became a nurse back in 2007, there was a new grad guarantee. And I think it was from Mike Harris, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
And, you know, like I had 3 job offers lined up before I even graduated. I think things have definitely changed a lot. We need to learn to adapt. We need to continue to recognize how diverse nursing can be, and that just because you're in one job doesn't mean you have to stay in that job forever. I think there's this thought among nurses that they really want to keep their seniority, and so they'll stay in a job that they don't like because they want to go up the chain. But then I have also seen so many nurses that work so hard until they get to retirement, and then something bad happens to their health and they can't enjoy the rest of their retirement. So you need to think about that as well.
Yeah, agreed. It's interesting. We at Caring Support, we were at a job fair for nurses not too long ago, and and it was in a border town. It was in Windsor, and the it was interesting that all these nurses come out, especially in fourth year, let's say, but there was a lot of them that entered into the room at different points, and they gravitated to the American outfits because the money, right?
Right.
So I was talking to some of these nurse students, and they were looking at our platform, looking at our marketplace. They spotted you, they spotted Barbarolas. They were like, they knew right away who you guys were. Um, but it was interesting. I said to them, so let me ask you a question. What matters to you when you work in a new environment and your first opportunity as nurse? And a lot of times you heard about money because they're young, and very often think about, oh, this profession now pays half decently, right? Sometimes really well, depending, right?
Hmm.
But and I said, but you know what's interesting is I think the longer we're in the industry and everything we see, what we like, don't like, before long you start to think about, and this is true of any industry, you start to realize what really matters in my life is things like work-life balance, is the vacation time, the benefits, do I appreciate this environment? Do they appreciate me? Am I rewarded and recognized?
Hmm.
And, are we treated like we matter? Like we can sit at the table and be part of engagement that makes a difference in this setting. And
Hmm.
that's the thing. If you can get that, then all of a sudden, like people just don't realize, I think a lot of times is they're going to get way more out of their nurses and all the other staff if they just felt part of something special. And that meant because they're listening to them, because they're like, hey, this is really important, I need to know this, right?
Hmm.
And and then they're making the changes to ensure that this is better patient delivery, this is better for treatment of the staff, this is better for, everything's just about improving things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that we all need to feel supported. We need to feel valued. I talk a lot about psychological safety. So I think that's really important for new grad nurses to feel that if you have a question, that you can ask that freely and get a response, and that no one is going to make you feel stupid for asking a question. No
Right.
one is going to say, "Oh, like you already asked me that." That you know that someone will be there to show you the skill so that you can provide safe care and not try to undermine you,
Hmm.
because a lot of that does happen in nursing, unfortunately. And I think it's something that we need to really look at. A
Yeah.
couple questions here. So I'm not sure what we think here, but there's a nurse that has a PhD in nursing with 10 years of experience as faculty and the bedside. Recently got her, I think, licensure in the US. Not sure how to start my nursing career in the USA. Appreciate any help and guidance. So, Malaravizi, I'm not sure if you're still there, but we probably need a bit more context. Like, are you licensed to work or are you still working on that? Um, what is your immigration status? So those would be helpful things to know. Maybe she wrote
Yeah,
us.
we're in Canada. I don't know if she realizes that. uh,
Yes, but I think the main thing is if you have your licensure and you're able to work, then it's back to that networking that we just talked about. Like that will apply with no matter what
mhm.
country you're in. So definitely network. Maybe even find other nurses who are going through what you are. LinkedIn is a great place to do so. So I think that would be your next step. Um, you might even want to seek out some resources. I know here in Canada, there are resources to help internationally educated nurses, nonprofit organizations, that kind of thing would definitely be valuable for you.
Yeah, we've got some, and she just replied, by the way, and indicated that she's licensed to work here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. That's the first step. Um, yeah. So I think it's just like, and maybe you could message me afterwards, but I think it's just a matter of networking and really letting people know what you did in your home country and how this will apply to your career in the States.
Right. Yeah. And perhaps maybe that she'd be willing in a private message to tell us where she currently resides if she is in Canada, because that might make it a difference on places or people that we could recommend that they talk to. Um, what about Claudia or Darlene?
Um, did I go
Claudia,
back to them? We have
yeah,
a few that we haven't addressed yet. So we've got a message from Juliet from the UK. All these points are very relevant. So many jobs I see ask for a CV or resume. Would you recommend telling your personal story in this format also, or is there a better way to stand out on paper? So I would say the resume is probably not the best place to tell your story. Where you might want to tell your story is in a cover letter
mhm,
and or LinkedIn, because the resume needs to be really compact and concise so that someone can see at a glance what you've done, what your accomplishments are. But I can just give you an example of a cover letter I wrote for a new grad nurse. So she wanted to talk about why she went into nursing, and she had a family member who was a patient at a really prestigious hospital. It was a pediatric hospital. So because her sister was sick and she spent so much time at the hospital, that was actually the reason she wanted to go into nursing, and she was applying for a job at that same hospital. And so I helped her share her story in a cover letter. That obviously isn't something you can, convey in a CV or a resume, but it did help her get the job. And certainly at the interview, I'm sure they asked her to elaborate on that. So I would say probably anywhere but a resume. So in conversations, on LinkedIn, maybe even on social media. Definitely, if you're submitting a cover letter, you can tell a personal story. I think anything, like we said, to make you stand out and make a connection to the person reading it would be really valuable.
yeah. If I can only touch on that and say that the personal story, a great place for that, because there's tremendous real estate for it, is in your LinkedIn profile. A lot of people totally ignore the summary, I think it used to be called, section in your profile. This has got a really big area where you can share that personal story and do it in such a way about show how you bring value to them, not about yourself, but in that way you're seen as valuable. Okay. So, and make sure that you share these important links with your CV and resume, of course, so they can get to your LinkedIn profile, etc. And then it correlates and totally is aligned with all your values, everything, so that they feel like, wow, okay, this person's awesome.
Hmm. And Claudia says, unfortunately, our healthcare system has been built on the expectation that nurses will always step up and step in, no matter how short staffed or unsupported. Yep. We simply expected nurses will keep doing it. And now we've come to the point where nurses will no longer sacrifice their physical and mental well being despite their intense desire to serve and help. It's sad that we had to come to this point and drive this home on a broader system design level. When paradigms and systems change, I think there's a little more, but it's not coming up. Yes,
Yeah.
I do think that it's a systems issue. Um, and we really need to keep pushing this for the people in charge that are making decisions that can actually make a difference for a lot of nurses.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. What about Darlene? I know Darlene. She's actually in the process of driving to the Alberta nurses.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, she did reach out to me. Thanks
yeah,
for commenting, Darlene. Encouraged by some of the changes in our nurse training academia that is open to collaborating with nurse leaders like herself to expand the thinking of nurses beyond just acute care and really focusing on what each student brings to the profession and the area of care they may want to bring their skills and passion into.
yeah,
I actually I looked this up recently. The Canadian Nurses Association, they give a breakdown of what area nurses are working in, and it was something like 60% of nurses work in acute care. So that's a huge number of 40% of nurses that are working in so-called non-traditional jobs.
yeah,
And so I think in nursing school, you're taught a certain way. I made a post about this earlier this week. You're taught that we graduate, we get a job in a hospital, we stay for our entire careers, and then we retire. And I actually asked a nurse about this who graduated in 2019, and she said, yes, we're still being taught this. So again, a lot of things just haven't really changed. We need to get to 2023, right? I think a lot of the things that we learn are great for 30 or 40 years ago, but we really need to evolve with where healthcare is now.
yeah. I totally agree. And it's interesting because I know Darlene and she's amazing. She's just really great, a great resource. Um, but when you think about yourself, Sarah, all these years, Darlene, all these years, and then later you look back on it and say, I'm going to share the story of what I didn't like, what didn't work, what we should have done, what So often I say to people, like, if you're in that role right now, you have this tremendous opportunity to make a difference. See, one of the things that I notice with healthcare is it's kind of like everyone's waiting for someone else to fix the problem. And you're like, well, this is all of our problems, and not just in healthcare, the whole country. And we
Mhm.
we all need to step up and say, what can we do to help with this? Because this is our greatest asset in this country. So we all should have vested interest in trying to make it better. you know so I think a lot of times it's so great when you see people like Darlene do this later to help others, absolutely. But at the same time, when we're in the role itself, we need to always try and find ways in which we can build up others and that we can unify. You think about the fact that I always tell people that if you're caught in that cyclical cycle of negativity, there's two things you look at. Number one, change the way you see things. Number two will help you get there, and that is question the circle of friends you're with. Because people will say things like, well, hey, can you tell what my future looks like? Yeah, show me your friends. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. And you are impacted and affected by people either positively or negatively. And if you're around people that bring you down and you feel exhausted and you're in the wrong circle, you should be in the circle of people who build you up. But the question is, sometimes it's you that has to stand up and say, I'm willing to lead this. I'm willing to start this. I'm willing to demonstrate through my actions that I want to be positive and make this new nurse that's coming in feel welcome. And how can I help you? Or maybe it's a nurse that's been in the industry for 20 or 30 years, but they come into a new environment. Sometimes people feel, this is my territory or whatever it is. This happens in so many different industries. But instead, what if people just said, hey, listen, can we build a culture that's all about supporting each other and building each other up and not being caught up in this stuff that's just complete nonsense and it's absolutely a waste of everyone's time? Um, just imagine the changes that would happen if we just embrace more of these things, which is all really at the end of the day about emotional intelligence. It's just that how do I put myself in the shoes of the other person and think, what are they feeling? How would I feel if I was in that position? What can I do to help them feel better?
Yeah, and we need to really break this cycle of nurses eating their young. So
Right.
just because it was difficult for you when you were a nurse and someone was hard on you does not mean you need to repeat the cycle onto the new nurses these days.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like hazing. You feel like, okay,
Yeah.
this is how it was for me. Now I have to make sure that the new nurses go through it the same way. No, you don't, because you need to be better. You need to take the higher road and you need to actually use your negative experience and make sure it doesn't happen to the newer nurses. I also think that there's a lot of jealousy. So when someone sees someone doing better than they are, they think, oh, I wanted to be there. I want to do that. Why not just do it together? There's enough space for everyone. We don't need to cut people down in order to step up yourself. So
Right.
I think that's important. And we, again, really need to lead by example. And it doesn't matter what happened to you or what's been done in the past. We need to move forward and move to, a better place and really just show people that this is how we operate.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have time for more questions here or comments?
Um, we could maybe do one more. So Monica just says, psychological safety is a big thing for me. Do you think not having this is worth a change in organizations? I think that it's certainly a conversation that should be had at all levels. I mean, if you don't feel psychologically safe, there has been research to show that that impacts patient care. If you don't feel comfortable to ask someone for help or to clarify something, that's definitely going to impact patient care. So I think if we look at it from that perspective, it's something that should be looked at the organizational level. Like, how can we make people feel more psychologically safe? But also, if you're in a situation where you see someone making someone else not feel safe, you have a responsibility to say something, because there's been so many times where everyone knows who the bully is on the unit and everyone just stands there and allows it to happen. So you need to be that person to break that cycle. And I there's a nurse that I really love. Her name is Renee Thompson. If you look up Renee Thompson on YouTube, she actually has a lot of practical YouTube videos, and she goes through these scenarios about how exactly you can stand up to workplace bullies and how you can have conversations that are psychologically safe. So just look up Renee Thompson. She's a great resource.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. At the end of the day, it's funny. It's silly as this analogy might sound. I've heard people say, "Oh, I spend all this time finding the perfect bed because I'm going to spend so many hours in that bed sleeping at the end of the day, right?" And I tell people, "Well, do you have the same due diligence happening with your work environment, or do you tolerate it? Because
Mhm.
after all, you want to be comfortable at night when you're sleeping. Don't you want to be comfortable during the day when you're working, right?"
Right.
So, you have to think about, when is your time. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, when it comes to this bullying, so much is caught up in it's all about me, it's all about me, and I worry that other people are trying to. Those are fear driven things, right? It's the same why people fear change, people fear whatever. It's all that stuff plays into this. When really, if you just change the way you look at it and say, this person's here to help, like new person comes in or whatever it is, what can I do to make that better? I was there. I remember. Would I want that happening to them? No, right? So I think everybody, you don't have to wait on the leader. You don't have to wait on everyone can take an opportunity to lead by simply just treating people better. That's number one, right? That's
Hmm.
not hard to do. It's really not.
Hmm. I totally agree. And we're just coming to the end of our time now. So we're
Yeah,
going to be wrapping up, unfortunately. I apologize if we didn't get to everyone's questions. But feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn if you do want to continue the conversation. Maybe, James, you could tell people where they can find you if they want to learn more about you or caring
sure.
support.
Sure. So our website is caringsupport.com. We are a Canadian company, and all the data that we store is in Canada. The other thing is, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. I was going to say I'd share my screen, but is there any way that I can post something in the chat here, maybe? Uh,
Yes, I don't know how you can share your screen. Like I'm able to
yeah.
share mine, but I don't know if you can share yours.
Yeah, so my
Yeah.
name is really difficult to remember, James Smith, but I am located in London, Ontario. If you look us up with Caring Support, we are on every social media channel because we should be. And but I certainly live on LinkedIn, so feel free to look me up. I love to connect with people, and I love to learn your story. Um, so yes, I see Mildred's on here too. Mildred is, her.
Oh, hi, Mildred. Hi again.
Yeah, she's a
It's
good
been a
friend
few
of mine.
days only, but nice to see you.
Yeah,
So
she's
I
amazing.
just put caring support in the chat. If anyone
Yeah,
wants to connect with James, it is true. You're on all social media platforms.
that's it.
If anyone wants to connect with me, definitely send me a message on LinkedIn. I will be happy to respond, or you can look up the RN resume. So my website is thernresume.com, all one word. If you like what you heard today and you're interested in learning more about personal branding, about mindset, about resumes and LinkedIn and all these great things, and you're looking to jumpstart your career, I do have a live webinar coming up next week with my friend Farah Laurent. She's another nurse career coach. So send me a message if you do want in on this webinar. It's going to be May 11th, just in time for Nurses Week. Would love to see you there. So thank you everyone for joining, and hopefully we can stay in touch.
Yeah. One last thing too. On Nurses Week, we're going to release a podcast that we recorded the other day, as you know, Sarah, because she was on it. So was Mildred, and Dion Sinclair from CMAHA. What an amazing human being she is. She's doing incredible things there. So we really look forward to look for that on our Caring Support podcast, and feel free to like it, share it, comment on it. We had a really great discussion there as well. Thank
Thanks
you, everyone.
everyone, and happy Nurses Week.
Take care.